It sank just 1,500 meters from safety. A newly built Swedish roll-on, roll-off ferry on its maiden commercial voyage, carrying over $200 million worth of cargo, including more than 100 fully loaded trucks. And in the early hours of June 7, 1980, the MV Zenobia slipped beneath the waves near Larnaca, Cyprus. There were no human casualties, miraculously, but the financial wreckage and the mystery that surrounded her sudden demise turned this incident into one of the most confounding maritime events in the Eastern Mediterranean. And today, just 42 meters below the surface, lies one of the world's most accessible and iconic modern shipwrecks, frozen in time as if she never meant to go down. The MV Zenobia was a marvel of Scandinavian engineering, built in Malmö, Sweden, by Kockums Shipyard, and launched in December 1979. Measuring 178 meters in length with a beam of 23 meters, she was designed as a state-of-the-art ferry to serve the route between Malmö and the Middle East, a crucial artery for freight movement during a time of increasing globalization. On board her decks and in her hold were rows of trucks from around the world, fully stocked with food, textiles, electronics, military equipment, and industrial goods destined for the booming Gulf markets. The ship had just completed sea trials and a test voyage without incident. But then came her first real journey, a route from Malmö to Tartus, Syria, via Piraeus, Greece, and Larnaca, Cyprus. And this is where the course of her story shifted. By the time Zenobia reached Larnaca roadstead, something wasn't right. Reports from the crew began to surface about a persistent list to port, a leaning of the vessel that grew worse by the hour. The onboard computer-controlled ballast system, designed to maintain the ship's balance, was showing erratic behavior. Every attempt to correct the tilt only seemed to exacerbate it. Engineers aboard tried to isolate the issue, maybe a sensor fault, maybe a valve stuck open. But the truth was more troubling. The automated ballast system was mistakenly pumping more seawater into the portside tanks, slowly drowning the ship from within. The Zenobia, despite her high-tech systems and Scandinavian pedigree, was becoming a victim of her own sophistication. As the listing worsened, authorities in Cyprus denied her access to port, fearing the enormous vessel could capsize and block access to Larnaca harbor. For several days, the ship floated uneasily at anchor just outside the port, her trucks straining against their chains, cargo groaning in the hull. Then, at 2:30 a.m. on June 7th, the list passed a critical angle. Water rushed into the open port side, flooding compartments faster than the pumps could clear them. Within minutes, the MV Zenobia rolled over and sank, coming to rest on her port side at a depth of 42 meters. The wreck stretched across the seabed like a fallen giant. The aftermath was immediate and bewildering. How could a new vessel equipped with the latest maritime technology sink on her first voyage without any collision or storm? Rumors flew. Some blamed software errors, others suggested sabotage, pointing to geopolitical tensions and the ship's valuable cargo, which included several military-sensitive shipments. No definitive cause was ever made public, and investigations quietly fizzled out. What was certain, however, was the scale of the loss. Over 100 trucks went down with the Zenobia, including several refrigerated lorries still filled with now fossilized meat and dairy. The total cost of the lost cargo alone was estimated at over $200 million, not accounting for the ship's own price tag. Insurance claims piled up, lawsuits followed, but the ship remained exactly where she fell. Silent, enigmatic, and tantalizingly close to the shoreline. Today, the Zenobia lies just a 15-minute boat ride from Larnaca harbor. Divers hovering above the wreck often describe their first glimpses as awe-inspiring. A full-size ferry, trucks still in place, some hanging halfway out of the open deck, others crushed by the tilt, all draped in marine life. The silence down there is heavy, not mournful exactly, but full of the unresolved questions that the surface never answered. No lives were lost, but something still haunts the site. The Zenobia didn't just sink. She vanished with secrets, entombed in steel. And that is where our journey truly begins. Because in the stories that follow of delayed warnings, strange coincidences, heroic salvage attempts, and the ship's strange second life as a diver's paradise, we'll uncover how the Zenobia transformed from technological marvel to cautionary tale. How a ship that never made it to her first destination became an underwater legend known the world over. In the early light of June 7, 1980, the residents of Larnaca woke to a changed horizon. The massive silhouette of the Zenobia, which had loomed offshore for days, was gone. Beneath the surface, the giant lay motionless, her cargo sealed inside a twisted world of steel. And for days after, salvage crews arrived, insurance agents hovered, and investigators paced the decks of nearby support ships, staring down into the blue, searching for answers that didn't float. Initially, efforts focused on containment and documentation. Despite the ship's depth, divers were able to reach the site with standard recreational equipment, thanks to her accessible location just 1.5 kilometers from the Larnaca shoreline. Early teams described an eerie sight. The ship had settled on her port side at a gentle angle of about 45 degrees, lying like a beached whale at rest. The bow pointed toward the open sea, her stern slightly deeper, resting at the edge of a sandy shelf that dropped further into the abyss. Inside the wreck, the damage was surreal. The ballast compartments had flooded completely. Corridors twisted with pressure, and control panels lay warped like melted wax. Yet the cargo decks, enormous garages meant for roll-on, roll-off loading, were astonishingly intact. Trucks sat frozen mid-transit, some still chained, others tossed like toys. The suddenness of the sinking had preserved everything in perfect chaos. The cargo itself sparked fascination and suspicion. Among the trucks were British military vehicles, Swedish refrigeration trucks, Greek produce transports, and even trailers containing munitions components, according to unconfirmed reports. The rumor mill churned. Some believed the Zenobia was carrying sensitive surveillance equipment or unlisted military tech. Why else would such a modern ship, with top-tier systems and no sign of collision or sabotage, have gone down so inexplicably? Divers and maritime specialists examined the ballast system again and again. Most agreed the root cause lay in the software, or rather, in the human overtrust in the software. The automatic ballast management, instead of adjusting the ship's stability during the journey, appeared to have steadily pumped more seawater into the port tanks. What began as a minor list turned into a fatal imbalance. But the exact failure, whether hardware, software, or operator error, was never officially confirmed. No black box existed, and the computers were underwater now. Meanwhile, attention turned towards salvage operations. Could the Zenobia be raised? Could the cargo be retrieved? The answer was technically yes, but economically disastrous. The cost of lifting a 10,000-ton vessel with 104 trucks inside would dwarf the value of the remaining cargo, most of which was insured and written off. Moreover, removing her posed an ecological risk. By now, marine life had already begun colonizing the wreck. Coral had started to bloom on her hull, and fish swam through broken windows. Nature was fast reclaiming the Zenobia. So, she was left alone, but not forgotten. In the years that followed, local Cypriot diving outfits began organizing small tours to the wreck. At first, it was considered too dangerous for all but technical divers. But by the early 1990s, as diving technology advanced and tourism in Cyprus exploded, the Zenobia was reclassified. It became not a hazard, but a haven. Her proximity to shore made her ideal. Her maximum depth, 42 meters, was reachable without exotic gas mixtures. And the structure itself, with multiple deck levels, open cargo bays, and interior corridors, offered a labyrinthine wonderland for exploration. Unlike many wrecks broken apart by age or explosives, the Zenobia remained whole, dignified in her descent. She wasn't a shipwreck as much as a sunken museum. Dive guides began mapping the safest routes. The truck deck, where refrigerated lorries still bore faint logos. The cafeteria, eerily preserved with its serving lines and steel tables. The engine room, a hulking maze of pipes and rusted dials. Advanced divers could swim from bow to stern in a single dive, emerging exhilarated, speechless. And with every dive came new discoveries. A cook's leather shoe, a box of preserved kitchenware, a cargo manifest half dissolved in seawater. Each object a whisper from that single, irreversible morning. Though no one died when the Zenobia sank, divers often speak of the ship in hushed tones. There's a sacredness to the site, not of tragedy, but of mystery. Something about her precision, her suddenness, her unresolved cause makes her feel like a question that still needs answering. More than 40 years later, the Zenobia now draws over 45,000 dives annually. She contributes millions to Cyprus's economy and remains among the top 10 wreck dives in the world. Yet beneath the tourism brochures and GoPro footage, the central enigma remains. Why did she really go down? The sea, for all its beauty, still keeps secrets, and the Zenobia, wrapped in blue and barnacle, remains one of its quietest puzzles. To truly appreciate the magnetism of the Zenobia, you have to see her not as wreckage, but as architecture. An underwater cathedral where steel and silence form walls and arches, where light filters through shattered portholes like sunlight through stained glass. Divers descending onto her hull describe a shift in atmosphere. The sea grows quieter, denser. The hulking shadow of the ferry, resting port side down, dominates the blue void like a monument. And then, as you get closer, the detail emerges. Coral-fringed door frames, intact headlights on sunken trucks, schools of silver fish threading through what was once a truck ramp. This is the magic of the Zenobia. She is immersive. She's not just a thing to look at, she's a place to enter. The experience begins even before you touch water. At the marina in Larnaca, local dive centers brief guests with reverence. You're about to visit one of the most intact wrecks in the world, they say. And it's true. Unlike rust-scattered wrecks battered by decades of storms, the Zenobia has remained sheltered, preserved by mild currents, minimal silt, and a relatively stable structure. Her interior decks remain navigable, allowing even novice divers to get a sense of exploration usually reserved for seasoned wreck specialists. Dive sites on the Zenobia are often broken into zones, each with its own mood and challenge. The cargo deck remains the crown jewel. Here, 104 trucks still sit in their lashing points. Some are piled atop each other, their tires eerily well preserved. Others hang suspended, caught mid-fall as the ship tilted. These are not just rusted skeletons. Many retain painted logos, doors, steering wheels, even dashboards with faded gauges. Some divers swear they've seen cab seats that could still be sat in. The cafeteria, another popular site, feels almost haunted. The space is oddly recognizable. Stainless steel counters, benches, even trays. It's the kind of scene that invites speculation. What did the final meal look like? Who sat where? Did anyone notice anything was wrong as the ship listed silently in the night? Divers float through the room as though through a dream, their exhaled bubbles trailing upward and tangling in ceiling fans now coated in coral. Then there's the engine room, massive, dense, and mechanical. This area is for advanced divers only, requiring tight navigation through narrow passageways. Pipes run like veins through the walls. Control panels, some still marked with labels, glint with marine life. Here, the complexity of the vessel becomes real. The Zenobia wasn't just a ferry. She was a marvel of engineering, her heart still resting where it failed to beat one final time. But it's not all shadowy corridors and machinery. The Zenobia also boasts exterior dive zones ideal for photography and less experienced explorers. The starboard side, which faces upward, offers vast, flat surfaces blooming with marine life. Groupers, lionfish, and wrasse patrol the area. Anemones flutter like lace along the ship's edge. And in some places, divers find their own reflections in intact porthole glass, an eerie reminder that this sunken relic was once bustling with crew and cargo, noise, and direction. Local marine conservation groups have praised the Zenobia for creating a rich artificial reef. In fact, several species now depend on her structure as a breeding ground. The ecological balance that has formed around the wreck adds another layer of importance to her preservation. She's not just a tourist attraction, she's a thriving habitat. Dive stories abound, some technical, others mythical. There are rumors of a ghost truck lodged deep in the bowels of the ship, inaccessible without advanced rebreather gear. Some divers speak of strange temperature shifts in the cafeteria. Others claim to have found sealed safes or rooms untouched since the vessel sank. Most of these stories are unverifiable, but they feed the lore. and every new diver adds a fresh set of eyes and sometimes fresh questions. One of the most striking aspects of the Zenobia is how she creates a shared ritual among those who visit. Divers who have explored her once often return, sometimes yearly. They bring friends, teach students, pass down routes and cautionary tales. It's not uncommon to meet dive instructors in Larnaca who have logged over 1,000 Zenobia dives, and yet even they say, "She still surprises me." There's a camaraderie built around the wreck, a quiet bond formed in submerged hallways and between schools of fish. For many, diving the Zenobia becomes a milestone, a tick on a bucket list, a memory marked by the gentle clink of tanks and the silence of the deep. But perhaps the most lasting impression comes once you're back on the boat, drying off in the Cypriot sun, sipping water and staring at the spot where the sea gives no hint of what lies below. The ferry is invisible again, and yet you know she's there, intact, watching, holding her secrets for the next diver brave enough to go find them. What makes the Zenobia especially unforgettable is not just her preserved structure or the haunting symmetry of sunken trucks. It's the emotional undercurrent that flows through each dive. Underwater, time dilates. Divers hovering through the corridors often find themselves wondering about the human side of the disaster. The crew's final hours, the decisions made in those frantic moments, the silence before the tilt, and then the chaos. The ferry had been packed with cargo, over 100 trucks, trailers, and commercial vehicles, most still loaded with goods destined for the Middle East. Some were transporting eggs, others had fresh produce, and a few even carried military supplies. There are stories, some verified, others urban myth, that one truck contained millions in British currency, others that a Volvo dealership's entire inventory now sleeps in salt water. While the full manifest remains partially classified, the visual evidence underwater paints a picture of massive financial loss. It's estimated that over £200 million in today's value sank with her, making it one of the most expensive maritime cargo losses in modern history. And yet, no lives were lost. That remains one of the most miraculous facts surrounding the Zenobia. Thanks to quick thinking by the captain and crew, all personnel were evacuated safely as the list became too severe to ignore. There were hours, days even, between when the ship started listing and when she finally capsized. People had time to act, but they didn't have time to save the ship. Captain Andreas Patsalides, a seasoned Cypriot mariner, reportedly fought to the last moment to correct the ballast system. Engineers tried to counteract the water ingress, adjusting pumps and valves to rebalance the ship. But the software glitch that originally triggered the failure, a misfiring ballast control system, proved fatal. The ship leaned too far, and despite multiple intervention attempts, she was lost. The psychological impact on the crew cannot be understated. For a sailor, abandoning ship is akin to betrayal. It's the final admission that control has slipped through your fingers. Interviews conducted years later describe a mix of guilt, helplessness, and even awe. Some crew members revisited the wreck decades later, guided by dive teams. One cook reportedly broke into tears upon seeing the kitchen, still eerily familiar under a blanket of algae and fish. For Cyprus, the incident was both an embarrassment and an opportunity. The Zenobia had been meant to represent a modern shipping era, large-scale, efficient ferry transport at bridging Europe and the Middle East. Her sudden loss, so close to shore, within view of Larnaca's beachfront, was a public spectacle. For weeks, locals lined the waterfront to glimpse the tilted ship. Rumors swirled. Was it sabotage? Insurance fraud? A design flaw? Theories abounded. The real culprit, an error in the computerized ballast system, seemed almost too modern, too sterile an answer. But it was this very system, intended to keep the vessel level by moving water between tanks, that malfunctioned catastrophically. Ironically, this same level of technological advancement that defined the Zenobia's cutting-edge appeal became the Achilles heel that doomed her. Today, if you ask older Cypriots, they still remember the morning the Zenobia disappeared. Some recall the uneasy silence on the docks. Others speak of the oil sheen that spread across the water for days. For a coastal town like Larnaca, tied to the sea in history and economy, such a disaster became woven into collective memory. Interestingly, the ship was never salvaged. Not officially, anyway. Over the years, there have been attempts, some legal, others less so, to recover valuable parts or even entire trucks. In the 1980s and 1990s, enterprising divers tried lifting vehicles using makeshift balloons and lift bags. Some succeeded in raising motorcycles or toolboxes, but most efforts were abandoned due to safety risks. The Zenobia, it seemed, had no intention of letting go of her treasures. The Cypriot government eventually declared the site protected, banning unauthorized salvage and restricting the types of dives that could be conducted. But there are still tales whispered in dive bars, of underwater welders slipping in at night, of safes that disappeared mysteriously, of guardian fish that led divers astray. All part of the Zenobia's growing mythology. Yet perhaps the greatest treasure she holds isn't mechanical or monetary. It's emotional. The wreck serves as a reminder of vulnerability, a time capsule of overconfidence, a memorial to the thin line between mastery and mayhem. Every diver who enters her shadows comes back altered, less certain, more reverent. The sea, after all, is a patient archivist. It doesn't rush to reveal secrets. It lets them sleep, salt-bound and coral-covered, until someone brave enough and respectful enough swims down to listen. And the Zenobia, silent, sprawling, dignified in her ruin, is still telling her story. The Zenobia has become more than just a shipwreck. It is now one of the top 10 diving sites in the world, drawing adventurers, historians, and curious travelers from every continent. Located just 1.5 kilometers off the coast of Larnaca, Cyprus, the ship is not only easily accessible but also remarkably well preserved. With depths ranging from 16 meters at the shallowest to about 42 meters at the deepest, it offers a thrilling yet manageable challenge for divers of all levels, from beginners to advanced technical enthusiasts. Dive centers across Larnaca have built entire businesses around this underwater colossus. There are guided dives available for every type of experience, from simple introductory dives around the main deck to deep technical penetration dives into the engine room or cargo holds. It's even possible to explore multiple decks in a single dive, thanks to the visibility that often exceeds 25 meters. Few wrecks provide such a range of options, and fewer still offer the chance to swim among perfectly preserved vehicles, stairwells, and even intact signage. One of the most iconic views is the row of Scania trucks, still chained in place as if waiting for their cue to roll onto dry land. These trucks, some tilted precariously against walls, others almost upright, are now home to schools of fish, moray eels, and even the occasional turtle. Marine life has colonized the wreck with enthusiasm. Lionfish float like ghosts through the corridors, and vibrant coral now softens the steel lines of destruction. The contrast between man-made machinery and natural beauty is stunning, a duality few dive sites offer. Many divers describe the experience as cinematic. Descending into the Zenobia feels like walking through a scene frozen in time, but underwater. The silence is heavy, almost sacred. Your torch beam glides over the curved hull, revealing tire treads on long-forgotten wheels, sealed crates marked in multiple languages, and even cups and plates in the galley still stacked in shelves untouched since June 1980. For some, the draw is historical. They come to document, to film, to study the progression of corrosion and marine colonization. For others, it's personal, especially for Cypriots who grew up hearing tales of the Zenobia's tragic descent. More than a few locals have told stories of family members who watched her tilt and vanish, a surreal memory that blurs into legend over time. Dive tourism surrounding the wreck has injected millions into the Cypriot economy, becoming a key part of Larnaca's identity. Restaurants, hotels, gear shops, and boat operators all benefit from the steady stream of wreck enthusiasts. The government, recognizing the economic and cultural value of the site, has invested in maintaining the area's safety and promoting eco-conscious diving practices. Anchoring directly to the wreck is prohibited, and only licensed guides may lead deep internal explorations. Safety is paramount when exploring the Zenobia. Though parts of the ship are wide open and relatively easy to navigate, others can be dangerously deceptive. Narrow corridors, enclosed spaces, and areas with tangled wires or collapsing walls demand extreme caution. Technical divers often bring reels, redundancy tanks, and advanced lighting to ensure safe passage. The wreck is a powerful reminder that beauty and danger can coexist beneath the surface. In addition to the Zenobia herself, nearby reefs and smaller wrecks create a vibrant underwater circuit around Larnaca. Dive packages often include multiple dives in a day, with the Zenobia as the centerpiece. Some divers return multiple times, choosing to explore a different section of the wreck with each visit. The bridge, the galley, the lower cargo hold, or the immense propeller at the stern, which still inspires awe with its sheer scale. Beyond diving, the Zenobia has become a symbol of resilience and mystery for Cyprus. She serves as a testament to technological ambition and its fragile limits, to human error, and to nature's patient reclamation of steel and wire. Each year, memorial dives are held on the anniversary of her sinking, often marked by laying wreaths on the deck or releasing biodegradable lanterns into the sea. These ceremonies are not solemn affairs, but respectful celebrations. Divers from around the world gather to share stories, photos, and laughter. The community that has formed around the Zenobia is passionate, diverse, and fiercely protective of her legacy. In a way, the ship has continued her mission, not by transporting goods across seas, but by uniting people across borders. The wreck is monitored continuously for signs of structural decay. As with all underwater relics, time will eventually take its toll. Yet efforts are in place to ensure she remains safe and accessible for future generations. Marine archaeologists have even begun detailed 3D mapping of the site, preserving every contour digitally in anticipation of the day when diving may no longer be possible. For now, though, the Zenobia sleeps in peace, cradled by the Mediterranean, visited by thousands, revered by many. She is not forgotten. She is not alone. The legacy of the MV Zenobia goes beyond steel and saltwater. For many, she represents the delicate intersection of human ambition and the unforgiving forces of nature. Her story, like many great maritime tragedies, is a combination of engineering wonder, subtle mistakes, and the haunting finality of fate. But what makes the Zenobia unique is not just her dramatic sinking or the mystery that clung to her for decades. It's the way she has been reborn through memory, community, and cultural meaning. Local schools in Cyprus often teach students about the Zenobia, not simply as a ship that sank, but as a chapter in the nation's maritime story. Museums in Larnaca feature exhibitions with artifacts retrieved near the wreck or on the shore after the disaster. These displays include rusted tools, documents, and replicas of the trucks now resting silently in her holds. Visitors are offered a chance to glimpse the scale of the ship and the tragic events through preserved footage and diver video compilations. Perhaps most poignantly, the Zenobia has become a silent war memorial of sorts, not to conflict, but to human oversight. Though no war caused her downfall, the suddenness and violence of her sinking has parallels with naval tragedies in times of combat. The initial panic, the unexpected tilt, and the final irreversible plunge all remind us how quickly precision can unravel when overlooked by even a fraction. There's an important story in the records, one that speaks to the root cause, a software error in the ballast system. The ship's computerized system began to take on water unevenly, and the crew, unfamiliar with the bug and without proper procedures to override it, could not compensate in time. Warnings were ignored or misunderstood. Pumps were activated too late or in the wrong sequence. And so in a matter of hours, a state-of-the-art roll-on, roll-off ferry became an unintended coral reef. Today, dive instructors often share this lesson before students descend. Zenobia didn't sink because of the sea. She sank because of the system. It's a message about the importance of diligence, about the human factor in every machine, and about how even advanced technology must be paired with knowledge and respect. In a broader sense, the Zenobia has inspired literature, film, and even art in Cyprus and beyond. Poets have written verses inspired by her iron bones beneath the blue, while visual artists have painted the surreal underwater scenes with ghostly trucks illuminated by diver lights. A documentary released by a Swedish filmmaker in the early 2000s helped spread the Zenobia's legend beyond the diving world, drawing attention to her eerie beauty and tragic tale. Ecotourism advocates have also embraced the Zenobia as a prime example of how sunken ships can evolve into artificial reefs that support marine biodiversity. Since her resting, over 200 species of fish and invertebrates have been documented around the wreck. Coral species not originally native to the area have begun to colonize her surface, creating a micro-ecosystem that attracts researchers as well as divers. Even the Cypriot government has cited the Zenobia as evidence for promoting planned ship sinkings to foster marine life in depleted coastal regions. But with attention comes responsibility. As the years pass, the Zenobia faces new threats, not from waves or weather, but from humans. Unregulated diving, careless contact, and souvenir hunters have left marks on the wreck. That's why preservation programs have been implemented in recent years. Diving centers now conduct orientation sessions before dives, emphasizing respect for the site and the importance of leave no trace principles. Signs remind visitors, this is not a theme park. It's a grave, a museum, and a reef, all in one. On the 40th anniversary of her sinking, a special ceremony was held on the water above her. Boats circled the site, casting flowers and petals into the sea. Divers descended with commemorative plaques and recorded footage from the wreck to share with those above. It was both solemn and hopeful, a moment to honor those who had been aboard, to appreciate what the wreck had become, and to renew the vow to protect her in the years to come. Some visitors return every year, not just to dive, but to feel a sense of continuity. They speak of the Zenobia not as an object, but as a presence. She's no longer just a ship. She is a character in Cyprus's collective memory. And as the tides continue to shift and the world grows ever more fast-paced, the Zenobia remains a fixed point, a place where history rests, breathes, and waits. She reminds us that in failure, there can be beauty. In decay, there can be life. And in silence, there can still be stories waiting to be heard. As the years slip by, the MV Zenobia settles deeper into both the seafloor and the imagination of those who know her story. Divers may marvel at her ghostly corridors and twisted decks, but for many, what truly lingers after surfacing isn't just the sight of rusted trucks or coral-encrusted bulkheads. It's the feeling of standing at the edge of a moment, frozen in time. Her silence is powerful, not empty. This feeling has brought together a unique community, a patchwork of divers, historians, marine biologists, artists, and even families of crew members who once stood aboard her. These people, many of whom never met, share a strange kinship rooted in awe, respect, and reflection. They call her the Lady of Larnaca, not out of sentimentality, but because the ship has earned a personality of her own, steadfast, mysterious, elegant despite the tragedy. You'll find plaques left in the hold, carefully secured out of respect, listing the names of the lost. They weren't many, just 13 lives, but each one meant something. Their names rest near the cargo they died beside. Trucks still chained in place, tires weathered but intact. A lunchbox was once found, unopened, its contents long dissolved into the sea. But the message it left was clear. This was not meant to be the end of their journey. And yet, here it is. For local Cypriots, the Zenobia represents something more subtle. Her resting place just outside the harbor marks a line between the known and the unknown, between routine and risk. She's become a metaphor for plans interrupted, for the fragility of systems that we trust too completely. It's not uncommon to hear her mentioned in conversations that have nothing to do with ships at all. Watch your balance, a mechanic might say with a wink, or you'll end up like the Zenobia. And yet, there's something incredibly alive about her story. Unlike many wrecks that fade into obscurity, the Zenobia has found her second life in the minds and memories of 1,000 visitors. Her metal may corrode, her structure may shift, but the story, this strange, half-lost, half-rediscovered story, grows richer each year. It gathers new voices, a young diver's first descent, a marine biologist's surprise at new coral growth, a writer's quiet inspiration during a dive that feels more like a pilgrimage than a sport. Even technology continues to reshape her narrative. With 3D scanning and virtual dive experiences, people who cannot even swim now explore her halls. Educators use her as a case study in marine architecture, software failure, and environmental adaptation. She has become more than a wreck. She is an evolving classroom, an artistic muse, a vessel of meaning. When the water is calm and the light just right, the outlines of her upper decks shimmer beneath the waves. Boats slow down as they pass overhead, and even those who don't know her name seem to instinctively lower their voices. Something about the space demands it. Something about her presence whispers, "Remember me." So as you resurface from the story of the MV Zenobia, perhaps you're carrying a bit of her weight with you. A quiet reflection on how quickly things can change, how even the most advanced systems can falter, and how beauty often emerges from ruin. The Zenobia isn't just steel and salt and silence. She's a reminder that behind every disaster is a web of human effort, risk, and unintended consequence. She's not a cautionary tale, nor simply a destination for thrill seekers, but something deeper. A monument to what we try to build, and what remains when those efforts fall short. Whether you're a diver, a dreamer, or someone who just needed a story tonight, thank you for traveling through her waters with me. These stories don't live unless they're told and remembered.